Hello, my friends, and welcome back to In a Blink of an Eye. This is Tom Russo, and boy, I have a treat for you today. But before we get going, we've got to talk about exactly what we do here. Life's precious, and I think we would all agree. But we find that sometimes we take things for granted until something happens in a blink of an eye. So, this is where we discuss stories from ordinary people whose lives are changed in an instant and how they overcame it through faith, courage, and determination. And I want you to join me on this podcast all the time for uplifting stories of how people face various challenges and learn to not only survive, but thrive. Now, In a Blink of an Eye is sponsored by tradingcardsmarketplace.com. Discover, connect, and collect. That's tradingcardsmarketplace.com. Now, golly, folks, it seems like I'm a broken record. I say this with every guest because I'm always so honored to have every guest. But we have a Christian musician with us today, Julie Kinscheck, all the way from Boston, Massachusetts. Got to be careful how I say that, right? Julie, welcome. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being here.
Thank you, Tom. It's so wonderful to be here.
I
Um,
am excited about your journey and your faith and how you express it through your music. And I know the audience is going to want to learn all about that. But before we do that, I like to throw it to you and kind of give me a little background about yourself, where you're from, where you grew up, where you went to school, that kind of stuff.
that could
Take it away.
that could take an hour by itself. Yeah. So I'm Julie Kinscheck, but I started as Julie Gibbons. I was born in Ithaca, New York,
Okay.
and it's a very little town, but it's got Cornell University and Ithaca College, and so it was very also cosmopolitan. A lot of international students, and my father was originally a congregational minister, and when I was born, and I had two big brothers. I still do, and my mother was uh, a poet and an English teacher, and my parents met singing musical theater in college alongside his studies in, to become a pastor. He also was singing in local operas. And so I grew up listening to my dad singing, you know, singing Mozart in the bedroom underneath me. And he had a gorgeous baritone voice. And although he didn't pursue it as a profession, he was very, very good. And I really enjoyed that. However, the 60s were happening, and I just dated myself right there. And craziness was going on, and the Vietnam War, and everything. And my father was very political, very involved in the anti-war movement. And he said some things from the pulpit, which made some people mad. And they asked him to step down. And though they did subsequently ask him to come back, they it ended up that he decided not to, and he left the profession. And my early church training, was very fledgling. I knew about Noah's Ark, that was Adam and Eve, that was about it, and I never really understood the cross. And it's funny, I always loved music and, probably because my parents both sang, although mom didn't do it much after smoking many years. But my brothers turned out to be a bass player and a drummer, and they played in bands, and they were quite a bit older than me. So, you know, I got to sit in every once in a while, but they weren't interested in doing the whole Jackson 5, have the little kid be the star. And so I know, really, isn't that funny? But, I picked up a guitar, when I was 9 and started playing and writing my own songs, and we moved to a commune in the country, and life was pretty crazy, and, most of the things that my friends' parents were afraid of were happening at my house. Um, some people might say that's not a real stable environment for a kid, but somehow I weathered it, and, we came.
Isn't it? I don't want to interrupt you, but isn't it strange how we adapt to the things that happen in our life, and even as a child or a young adolescent, we kind of deal with what happens, and it's our normal,
Yeah,
right? It
oh, yeah,
was your normal.
it was.
Yeah.
So I was living the hippie life as a little girl. Um, and, it kind of fit right in with me singing my, like, Joni Mitchell kind of so folky
Folk
stuff.
songs kinda stuff?
Yeah, I was right there, me and Joni. Um, but, I always thought that I should get discovered and, nobody was discovering me as a little child, and I got deeply involved in gymnastics and wanted to go to the Olympics and kinda was trying to juggle music and gymnastics for a while. But, eventually music came out on top when I realized that I wasn't ever gonna make a perfect 10, thank you, Nadia.
I remember those '76 Olympics, man, I remember those.
Oh, 76, that was Olga, baby. Olga Korbut.
Yeah, I thought Nadia was in
Wait,
'76,
was
but
she
maybe
72? Was
yeah, I
Olga
think Olga
72?
Corbett was '72,
Okay,
yes.
yeah. That was
We're
what
both dating ourselves
oh
now.
my gosh, but that's what inspired me to get into gymnastics was all
Yes. Olga probably got you into it, and Nadia made you wanna shoot for that 10.
yeah,
My wife was a big fan of Nadia, so I
yeah.
understand, yes.
They didn't have spring floors back there, folks. We
No,
didn't have
no,
spring
it was
floors,
a
we had wooden beams, and the uneven bars were so close together that you got lots of bruises on your hips. I blame that for some infertility that I faced later in life, but that's another story. Um, but, uh but yeah, so long story even longer, I started getting into different folk groups and things. I was in this group called Rye Bread when I was in high school, and I went off to Europe on an exchange program in Munich and played on all the pedestrian zones all over Europe and, made a decent living doing that. Um,
was
and
it more folk rock type music at that
yeah,
point?
at that point, yeah, I was doing a lot of Beatles and Carole King and I still did some Joni Mitchell and that kind of stuff around then, and a lot of my original material too. And I had a boyfriend actually back then who also played guitar, and he came over to Europe and traveled with me, and um, when I wasn't doing the actual Rotary Exchange program in Munich. But I almost got picked up by, ABBA's producer, Richard Gillison, in London, and I thought that was gonna happen, but he couldn't make me any concrete promises, and I had deferred admission to Oberlin Conservatory, so I came back to the United States and went to college and,
You went to the
discovered
Berklee College of Music, didn't you?
eventually.
Oh, okay. Not I'm jumping ahead of the
Yeah,
story here.
I know, I told you, this is a long story. So now I'm going to Oberlin. And it's traditionally a very classical school, great liberal
Yes.
arts, but very classical. I
That's
was
in Michigan, isn't it?
It's actually Oberlin, Ohio.
Oberlin, Ohio,
It's
okay.
near Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay, I don't know why I thought it was in Michigan. I thought there was something in Michigan, I don't know.
There probably is something, but it ain't that.
Shows my ignorance.
Whatever. But I had 12 relatives, including both of my parents, who went to Oberlin, so I got good scholarships, and it made sense. Um, but I discovered very quickly that I was not cut out to be an opera singer like my dad, and that I had other things, and somebody told me about Berkeley, and I went there for a summer in Boston, not Berkley in California, but Berklee in Boston, and, I came for a summer. I loved it. I eventually transferred there and on a full scholarship and, ended up, staying in Boston. I'm still here.
Yeah, that was what kinda made you fall in love with Boston, right?
Yeah, I was,
That's cool. A
and jazz.
Northeast girl, is that so a lot of my, audience is here in the South, so this is great for us as we're expanding our reach to the Northeast, I'm loving it.
Well, I do have, some South experience too, which we'll get to, but
Okay,
my
good,
latest, my latest, releases are done with a producer out of, Asheville, North Carolina,
fantastic,
who
okay.
used but anyway, we'll get there. So anyway, I was in Boston, and there was this guy who kept inviting me to church, and, uh, at that point, I had been playing in all of these, cover bands in smoky bars. It was before, people still smoked in bars everywhere, and I was running myself absolutely into the ground. Uh, I had a day job because the gigs weren't enough money, and so I'd be waitressing or I would be doing telemarketing during the day, and then I would be, um, going to my gigs like 5, 6 nights.
Whatever you could do to make the dream stay alive.
No, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I get that.
I even got tangled in Scientology for a year. That was a whole nother story. But, anyway, I would do anything from my career. It was all about, I kind of I was, a medium star at Berkeley. At that time, there wasn't as huge a voice department as there is now. But I kind of thought I would get out of school and the red carpet would roll out for me, and that isn't what happened. And I spent a lot of time going to New York and LA and Nashville and trying to promote myself and my cassettes. That's also dating me. And
I know all about them. Do
yeah.
the pencil to try to rewind them, if
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
it I'm
Um,
right there with you, sister. Hey, I'm right there with you. I understand those references.
mm, yeah. And I even took a class at Oberlin called The Life and Teachings of Jesus. So there was still something in there that was maybe wanting to find out more, even though I had really put Christianity aside after, surviving the whole ex-Christian commune thing. I was like, this didn't work for dad. It's not working for me. Forget it. But that class that I took in college did more, honestly, to hurt my faith because the professor was all about, well, look, it's different in Matthew than it is in Mark in this passage. So therefore, it must mean it isn't accurate or isn't reliable. And I didn't have enough understanding to be able to talk about, well, Matthew was talking to, the Jews and, Luke was talking to the Gentiles. And, I didn't understand those
Also,
differences.
two people's different stories. It doesn't mean the stories are different. It means their interpretations of it.
I
That's
mean,
all.
and they saw it from where they were. But anyway, so this guy, Jim at Berkeley, kept inviting me to church. And he was a guitar player, really, really good, still is. Jim Peterson, look him up. Fantastic guitar player. But anyway, uh, he would go on gigs with me and I'd be like crying about my latest messed up relationship and he'd say, "Oh, you need a Christian." I don't know whether he was interested at the time. I don't know. But I'd be like, "Shut up and, play your guitar, man."
Play guitar.
Like, "Don't tell me about your
That sounds
religion."
like a song. Shut up and play guitar.
Maybe I should write that. Hmm. You got an idea? I'm inspired, Tom. Okay. Um so anyway, I kept saying no to him until. And this is, I don't know if you want me to wait, but this is okay, cool. I'll just go on. Um, until I had significant problems. And I think God does this a lot. He does things to get our attention.
Doubt.
You
No
know.
doubt.
And um he knows what each of us need to get his attention. You know. It's like he tried, well, maybe I don't make it sound like God tried and failed. Like he gave me the option to respond simply by invitation and by example. But I was too, just
Focused.
too focused on my own things to pay attention.
And I think we've all been at that point at some stage in our life. Sometimes I think that kind of ties in with your late adolescence, early adulthood. I think you
Mhm.
get really focused in on what you're doing. I'm not trying to speak for you. I'm speaking more from my experience, but I know that early in my career and my banking career, I became laser focused on that, and I kind of lost touch with things. And I had kids and a family, and I became too engrossed in my work, and I know God, shook me around and said, "Hey, get your priorities right."
Yeah, I think he does that. And probably lucky for my kids I didn't have any yet. But um I think about that sometimes, Tom. What if I hadn't found Christ when I did and I had married this fiance that I had who that would have been a disaster. And I had some children and I was still just laser focused on my career. I'm sure I would have ended up divorced. I would have been a lousy mom because I would have been, too focused on myself. You know, God knew what I needed. So anyway, what needed to happen was I needed to stop singing. What? What? This was my life. And this was my identity. This was everything to me. And what ended up happening was I drove myself into the ground. I burned the candle at way too many ends, pushed my voice, never rested, didn't hear the signs. It's time to rest. It's time to stop. You need to take a break. And I ended up getting vocal damage. I got vocal
Yeah,
damage.
this was around 1990, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so you get some vocal node damage that, quite honestly, was career threatening, really.
Yeah, and nobody was talking, at least in the music circles that I was in. I didn't know anybody who'd ever gotten node surgery or ever, had serious vocal damage and then recovered from it. I thought this was it, that I had done it and it was over. And I was terrified, like, what is my life going to be now without my voice?
So I have to stop your story there, because this is that blink of an eye moment, really, to me, for you. You may have others too, but this one for sure is one where God's kind of talking to you. And
Very,
when that happened to you, right when you first found out, and you're in the depths of why, God, why? How how did you deal with that? Was it a dark era for you for a little while, or did you come out of it rather quickly?
that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. I mean, I think it was a bit of a dark time.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, even now, if I get a flu and I can't sing very well for a couple weeks, I'm coughing and everything, it's depressing for me. I have a hard
right,
time having a good attitude,
right.
because my my singing is so embedded in who I
It's
am.
your identity. It's your identity. It's who you are. It's embedded in you, right?
And
I
I
mean,
get
that's
so much joy from using my voice. And so then when I can't use my voice, I feel locked
right,
up, you
right.
know?
Well,
Um,
I know for me, when I lost my eyesight in my left eye, I went through almost a month of just total depression. I was like, I had to learn how to do everything. I had to learn how to drive. I had to learn how to walk. I had to learn how to eat again. I mean, because my balance and my depth perception were all off. And so I don't want to make this about me, but I'm trying to draw a comparison. I was in this valley,
yeah.
and eh, I needed God to snap me across the face, really, and that's really what happened. So I'm curious as to how long you were kind of in that depth before you really started saying, "Oh, I'm here, God. Let's figure this out."
So a couple of things happened at the same time. It became obvious that I couldn't sing. I had to cancel everything. My band broke up. I had a lot of shows booked. I had to cancel all my shows, which meant having to, get in touch with club owners and say sorry, which I knew that was killing my reputation. But then I had this fiance who we had broken up a couple of times before and gotten back together. But then he broke up with me again on Valentine's Day. What a guy. Anyway, oh no, okay, by this time it was fall. Sorry, that was an earlier time. But anyway, he broke up with me. And this time I was like, I'm not going to take you back. Forget it. You are too much of an emotional drain on me, and right now I am already so drained. I can't deal with you too. And but then in his dark hour, because I wouldn't take him back, he turned to my friend Jim. And Jim, of course, by that time had a girlfriend of his own, and he had been reaching out to David and I and taking us to dinner and stuff and trying to get us interested in church, and we hadn't been interested, but we liked their friendship, right? And, they had also started coming out to my gigs and things, a lot of the Christians from Jim's church, and I think they must have seen something in me that I might be open someday, because they were really working to invite me in, but David.
It's God talking. That was God working through
That
them.
was totally, totally, and so then David turned to Jim and said, "I gotta do something about my life," and he started to study the Bible. Now, I have to say a little bit about this too. My ex-fiancé there, he was, from a Jewish background, and It's kind of one of my little secret, bucket list items, I guess, is that I would love to study the Bible. I do Bible studies with women now, and I would love to study the Bible with a woman of a Jewish background and help her to see how the prophecies came true in Jesus. And, um, because I would think of all the people that it would be those who understand the Old Testament who would grasp this, but that's another topic too. But anyway, when David started to study the Bible with Jim, he came back to me and he was like, "Julie, I'm so sorry about this and that and the other thing." And I was so blown away. I was like, "What's going on?" And he said, "Jesus died for me, and I can't treat you like this anymore." And I was like, "Whoa." And so then I went to Jim and I said, "What are you doing?" Because I've been trying to help this guy to it, get his act together for a couple years, and he's been studying the Bible with you for a couple weeks, and he's a new man. What's up? And so I sat down with Jim's girlfriend, Jean, and some other wonderful women from the church. A shout out to Elena and Lori, if you hear this. Um, and Suzanne and Karen but I started to look at the scriptures now from a personal standpoint. And when I when you really look at the Bible from a personal standpoint, what's God saying to you, not just studying it from a school kind of way, it brings a mirror up, and you have to start grappling. And at that time still couldn't even talk. My voice was still so
So
rough.
weak and rough.
Yeah, but, I could read, and I could pray, at least in my head, and, the folks from church is the Church of Christ that I'm affiliated with and still am, the International Church of Christ, but the Boston Church of Christ locally, but they just really helped me to see how much God loved me even when I couldn't sing. And that God's love was unconditional. And for so much of my life, I think I equated my worth with my ability to sing. And that's why it was so tragic to lose my voice, because I felt I had no worth
Well,
without
it goes
music.
back to that identity. It goes
Yeah.
back to that's who you were. This has done the same to me. I wore glasses as a child and I got teased miserably and I hated it. And so I wore contacts for 50 years. And I abused it. And that's how I wound up getting the affection that took it away. And now I have to wear glasses again. And but it's okay. God has spoken to me and said, "Hey, it's not about your glasses. It's not about your looks. It's about who you are as a person and the message that you give." And that's the whole reason why I started this podcast, is because I want to share my ministry with others that have had challenging things in their life. And then you might blame God at first, but then realize there's a bigger picture out there for you. There's a bigger picture, and that's why I love your story, Julie. I love it. So now we're back here. So you're meeting with this women's group, and you're finding out a little bit. You're exploring a little bit more about Christianity. Pick it up from there.
Yeah, and, just learning to understand, what the cross really means, because I missed that in my little girl experience of Christianity. And, I remember I went to, during one of those times when my friend Jim was reaching out to me and I said I wasn't interested, I did go to one Easter service with him, because I kinda like the ceremony of Easter Christmas, And, and I remember being really kinda grossed out because they did sort of a it was pretty graphic. They did a representation of the cross in a dramatic way on the stage, and, I just kinda walked away, you know, "Ugh, what was that?" And so when I started to really dig into the scriptures and understand the sacrifice of Jesus and understand the love that that represents, and to understand my need for a savior, and trying to understand what was sin, and how, of all the sins, my pride had totally engulfed my life. And I think now, as a Christian artist, jumping way forward, that's something I think I always have to keep an eye on it, because um, you know, being an artist of any kind, we rely on people liking what we do. And even as a worship leader, if the congregation isn't into what you do, if they don't think what you did was beautiful or good or whatever. And so, we're still dependent on, pleasing man. And, pride can get in there and insecurity. But I think at least now I know that and I can watch it and I've even prayed to God over the years, like, Lord, don't make me more successful than I can still be devoted to you and be an excellent wife and mom.
I
Um,
think that's a beautiful prayer. I think that's a beautiful prayer. I think that's a lesson that every one of anyone who's listening should adhere to is don't make it all about the career. Don't make it all about the money, chasing the money. Make it about being a better person and spreading the good word. And I think that's the lesson that you're talking about there.
yeah. I mean, but don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean I don't
Oh,
want to be more successful
oh,
as an artist.
absolutely, absolutely. I want my podcast to go mega viral and but not just because of the financial gain that it might mean for me, right? I want it because I wanted to spread the good word. That's
Yes.
what I want,
Yes.
and if I make a little coin on the way, that's a wonderful thing. But I'm truly not doing it for that. I'm doing it to spread the word. But in order to spread the word, I need to get more and more people involved.
That is so true. And we do need to eat, and pay our bills and things like that. But
Absolutely.
um but
Bills and money. Yeah. I
so
don't I don't have a problem with that, so.
yeah, I always get enough food. Yeah. You can tell. No, but yeah, so obviously I came to a faith. I was moved by the word. God worked in my heart, and it took me a few months of really digging in to take that leap and make that decision. But um, I'm a little, just honestly, I'm a little skeptical about these like 1 second conversions at a concert thing, because I really think it's so important as God talks about counting the cost, you know, and understanding what the commitment of following Jesus is all about.
So it's
Um,
kind of a road. It's a
yeah,
road to that recovery and road to that faith building.
yeah. And, so I was baptized, in Christ for the forgiveness of my sins, on January 6th, 1991. I was 27 at the time. I was single, and, I was so scared before I was baptized because I knew my life was going to be changed, because I knew this was a life decision. I was not doing this lightly. But I came up out of those waters with a great big smile on my face, and I've never turned back.
Beautiful.
And that, unfortunately, ex-fiance ended up not deciding to continue following Jesus. And I even had a stalker. I had all kinds of weird things that happened along the way. And people got worried. Oh no, is she going to leave? And I'm like, no, I'm here about God. God is why I'm here, you know? And, now the crazy thing was that, I had this vocal damage, right? And, I was afraid I would never sing again. But at that time, I didn't tell you all this, when we were talking briefly beforehand. Um, at that time, I didn't get the surgery yet, but I was able, with vocal rest, extended vocal rest, and with vocal therapy, to heal enough that by the time I had been baptized for 6 weeks, I was able to sing again. And my first performance was at a standing room only at the Wang Center in Boston for about 4,000 people at a big church event, where I was able to share about how God was no longer from a distance in my life.
How cool is that? But going back to that point, how did you know that you could sing again? How did you I mean, did a feeling come over you and say, "You know what? I'm gonna give it another whirl," or was it something you kinda meanie, kinda felt work towards, or how did it happen?
Well, I was going to see a laryngologist, a vocal specialist who worked with singers. In fact, with Celine Dion and James Taylor and lots of people who were quite famous, and was getting help from a vocal therapist. And they started to also tell me that this was not necessarily a permanent situation. At first that's what I thought, but over time I learned that it was getting better, with the exercises I was doing with the therapist. And it was gradually getting better. And, it still took me a while. I mean, I was still a bit fragile 6 weeks after my baptism, but realized by that time it was almost 5 months since I had lost my voice altogether.
At that point when you have this concert, and I remember you mentioned something about how you kind of just felt like, you know what, I am going to devote. If you give me my voice back, I'm going to sing the word. I'm gonna spread the word with my voice. How did that come about?
Thank you for reminding me. Um, Before I was baptized, I mean, that was something that I prayed to God about. I said, Lord, if I make this decision to devote my life to you, then, if I ever get to sing again, every note will be for you. Uh, for quite some time after I was baptized and started singing again, I wasn't doing any kind of secular gigs of any kind. Um, you know, Probably a year later or so, with some friends from church, we put together a band that did some outreach by singing covers in clubs and stuff. Um, but then I became the musical director for an a cappella group of 7 women from the church. Um, and we were singing at church functions. We ended up getting into um, the whole a cappella world in the Boston area and doing competitions and things. And, but we were singing we called it a cappella gospel jazz. It was, it was all,
Created your own genre.
we did. It was like gospel, well known spirituals and uh, hymns and things that we did our own way, if you will, and added scat singing and interesting, vocal drums and everything else, and beatboxing. And then, but then I wanted that group to go pro. I wanted that group to really get out there into the world in a greater way and be able to share the gospel and have a real career. And there was 3 people in the group that were happy with their day jobs, and 3 people in the group that wanted to go professional, and or 4 people or something. And it was not. We couldn't come together with it, and so eventually we broke. Well, eventually I left, some other people left, and they just continued singing at some church functions and didn't go out. And then 10 years later, we got together in in 2007. We had a reunion of everyone who'd been in the group in the past, who was available. So there ended up being 10 of us, and we did an album. And so Faith in Action Live actually is available out there. Um, well, there's a couple of my originals on there, a few of my 3 of my originals on there that I arranged for the group. Um, but along the way, I've written a lot of songs, for special events, for the church, for weddings, for funerals, for just stories about my faith or based on scripture. And a couple of things here and there, which were just love songs to my husband and things like that. But, um, or about my children when I eventually had children. But, uh, I've been now a worship leader, for, uh, 30 years. And, I'm a Christian artist, I have 4 albums out now.
Let
Um,
me see some of these albums. I want
alright.
to see them.
So, alright. So Faith in Action Live. Oh, I should have grabbed one of those. It's okay. The first one was Faith in Action Live. Here we go. And
Okay.
then the next one, that was in 2007, or maybe it was 2006. Then 2007, we came out with The Force, and this was Christian rock for kids. And my
Okay.
husband
So
and I.
it's got music with the vocals,
Yes,
not
yes.
not just a
Yeah,
cappella.
the acapella was only one thing.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and this one is, it's rock, it's rap, it's uh pop, it's all Christian songs that my husband Ralph Kinscheck and I wrote. He's a keyboard player and a audio engineer. And so we used to lead the music for preteen camps, and
Nice.
and we wrote theme songs every year for the camps, and we put this together. shortly after that, in 2008, I put out my first solo album, which all these things, they were all made of glass, of
Yeah,
plastic. No,
no, that's fine.
um, but this one is Grace with Jazz on top, and this one kind of walks the line between contemporary Christian and country with a little jazz. So
Okay.
again, I'm very hard to market because I'm very unique in
You're
my
a little bit
genres.
of everything. That's a beautiful thing.
That's me. Uh, I have among other things, on here, a song called Coffee Song, which became a hit in Austria on the country charts. Crazy. But that is
Okay.
actually one of the few songs on here, which is just a love song to my husband. But um, then we could put out Let My Light Shine, um, which is also, uh, both of these two are both full band. This one doesn't really lean country at all. It leans a little bit more toward pop rock and jazz. And uh, one of the songs on here, other than "Let My Light Shine," the title track, which I play a whole lot. One of the other songs on here, which has gotten a lot of attention, is called "You Are." It's a love song to God, and there is a popular video on YouTube that you can look up. "You Are" Julie Kinscheck. Um, but in the last 2 years, I've been going down to Asheville, North Carolina, Black Mountain, actually, which is near Asheville, and working with a producer, Neil Merrick Blackwood, um, who, he's got a pretty impressive resume, working with Dolly Parton and all kinds of crazy people, Stevie Wonder. Um, but Take Six. Um, but anyway, we've been recording a lot of original things. We've recorded 11 songs of mine over the last couple years, and I've been releasing them one at a time, honestly, because I can't afford to release them all at once. um,
Understand?
but but these songs, I'm very, very excited about the spiritual impact I feel like they could make. Um, there's a song on there which I co-wrote with Neil called "You Listen to My Prayers." Um, you listen to my prayers, my Jesus told me so. And the I wrote this song called "What Being Christian Means." Because so many people look at Christianity as a bunch of rules. They don't realize.
Agree, and that's an interesting point that we haven't really explored, but it's not. It's a faith. That's what it is. It's a faith, and if you have faith, things will happen. If you have faith and belief, that's kind of Christianity to me, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously central, that faith in Jesus, faith in God, faith in what he's done for us. But when you think about people think of what they can't do, and then the song talks a lot about what you can do. You get to be adopted into the family of Christ. You get to have your sins forgiven. You get, eternity with God. You get God
Right,
listening to your prayers and all these things.
right.
Um, my most recent release, actually just earlier this month on the 6th, um, was Jesus Since the Day, which interestingly, we did an a cappella version way back here on the Faith in Action CD. But this is done with a full band and a whole different sort of feel to it. Um, but, with the idea of, Jesus, since the day you washed my sins away, I've done things that I'm still not proud of, but, I'm grateful to you, for your forgiveness. And then the second verse turns it around to Jesus, since the day you washed my sins away, I've gotten to do things I've always dreamed I'd do. And I've fallen on my knees to worship you.
That's
And
beautiful, beautiful.
so,
So, are you in the act of touring as well? Are you doing any tour dates, gig dates, things like that, or is that just kind of scattered as they come? Or
um, you know, I did a great show at Cafe at the Mill last week with a great band, a worship set of my originals, and then some of my favorite covers, Christian covers. And I expect to be doing a lot more of that going forward.
as some
Um,
of these songs are released and so forth?
yeah, I'm planning to do a CD release of these and the ones that are also finished from the project in September. And um, I'm going to get as much as I can between now and then, but I think probably more major touring on this is probably gonna happen next summer and
Okay.
this summer, but, you can always go to my website,
Please tell us.
juliekSings.com,
I'm gonna
and
put it right down there. Say it again.
www.juliekSings.com,
All
and,
right. We're gonna
that's
send people your way.
please do, and, it's got a shows tab on there, you can find out where I'm playing, you can find out what church I'm singing at. I'm singing at a conference coming up in July in New York. Um, been talking to people about Christian festivals. Some of them I got to a little too late, so hopefully I'll be in Connect Fest and Soul Fest and some of those things next year. Um, but right now everything's on Spotify and YouTube and Apple Music and all those places. And it's crazy because nobody goes to see those unless you send them there, which
Right.
means that either you folks out there in radio land, hopefully podcast land, will decide to look it up and enjoy it. I can also give you links for that. Um,
Absolutely.
and tell your friends because golly gee, Facebook ads are expensive. But
Yeah, they are. Well, I was gonna put you on the spot and have you sing us a song, but, if you can believe it or not, we've actually gone 14 minutes over my normal episode length.
oh no,
Time
no.
time flies when you're having fun and having a great conversation. Look at this, vocal training. All right, I
Vocal
love
training for praise singers. So,
that is beautiful too.
because my mission is to let my light shine. And along with that, as a singer, but also training singers, I'm a voice professor at Berkeley. I do workshops for churches. And because I feel like I went through traumatic vocal damage, and out of it, I learned so much. And later on in my story, things got bad again when I was a teacher, and I ended up getting surgery, but I knew at that time, I just didn't have 6 months to get better. And so I understand what that's all about, going through node surgery, and now I've learned my lessons, and I've written about them, and I've gotten a master's in vocal pedagogy now and everything, and so it's
And they can
on.
get the book on the website as well?
Yeah, they can get on the website, they can get on Amazon,
Okay,
Barnes& and Noble, wherever you are,
outstanding.
and so, yeah, so my music is my soul, is my passion of how to share Christ, but I also wanna pass it on and help others to be able to do that too, and
Well, I absolutely love your passion, and I wrote a book many years ago. It's more of a business book and a sports book, but I built a mathematical formula for building the perfect team in your work environment. And the way to do that, it's meant for business people, right? But the way you do it is the multiplier is passion, and you have to
mm,
have passion for what you do. And if you do that, you're going to be a success somehow, some way. It's going to happen. I'm going to wrap this up here, but I want you to hang on because I want to talk with you a little bit afterwards. So um, let me wrap this up, and then
thank
we'll.
you so much, Tom, for giving me this chance to tell my story, and
I
love
am blown
talking to you.
away. I
You
am blown away, and thank you for sharing your story. And folks, if you like hearing uplifting stories of overcoming challenges in life, click the like and subscribe button below. Please, I need it. I meet people just like Julie here. God put her in my life through Facebook. I mean, I was another one of those things. I've said this before on this program. I actually reached out, and she reached back out to me because I reached out. Don't be afraid to reach out. Be sincere, and that's what I did with her, and she reached back out. Now, perhaps you have a story of your own to share: an accident, sudden loss, PTSD, alcohol, drug abuse, a natural disaster, illnesses, all of these types of things. We have things that we have to overcome, and you'd like to share your journey of overcoming. Please contact me at the email shown below for consideration for a future podcast interview. Like I said, I rely on viewers like you to share their stories. That's the whole concept of this ministry. That's the whole concept of In a Blink of an Eye. Thanks again to tradingcardsmarketplace.com for their continued sponsorship to bring these great stories to all of us. Tradingcardsmarketplace.com, discover, connect, collect, awaken the collector in you. I want to thank everyone out there, especially my family, our military, veterans, first responders who put their lives on the line every day. And please don't forget the teachers and the medical professionals who all make our world better, one person at a time. But most of all, thank God for all of the blessings in our world. We just need to make sure that we concentrate on those every single day. And until next time, my friends, you know what I'm going to say. Carpe diem, seize the day.